Thank you for Patreon now for donating to the Patreon.
Hey guys, Van Diesel back with Carpe Vanguard deck profiles. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like, comment, subscribe, and listen to the This time we are covering DZ Set 1 Oselargest. So that's like the previous video with Triumph Dragon. We are covering the, for the last week of deck profiles, we are covering the original quick start decks for before D to show off the energy charge cards. And honestly, I didn't think, like I said in Triumph Dragon, that the set 1 would be nice to them, but it actually kind of was. Except Oselargest, one of my favorites coming out of the quick start bosses in general, suddenly became my least favorite. You know, it doesn't make sense because the two that were my least favorite became tied for second on what my favorite was, and then the one that was like, or at least one that was tied for first, immediately became my least favorite. It doesn't make sense. Anyways, let's go into the deck profiles we got. So because it's the deck is fine, it's just it quickly changed my perspective. So first up, of course, we have our energy generator. So you may have one in your ride deck, crest in your ride deck, auto ride deck. When you ride, put this card into your crest zone. If you want second energy charge 3, continuous, you may have to 10 energies, and at the beginning of your ride phase, energy charge 3, and then act once per turn, energy boss 7 to draw a card. You will never use this skill in that deck. You will never want to use that draw skill because considering the fact that your main Vanguard requires 4 energies, this is a detriment to you. If it was 1 energy less, maybe you could find the time to use this in your deck. You will never use this because that is way too expensive. But being able to draw a card if you needed to is nice, but also being able to energy charge 3 every turn and amp up to Oselargest effect and your other energy blast using skills is definitely really helpful. So obviously we want to ride deck crest. Then we run our starter. So as you'll see with the rest of them, and of course Triumph Dragon, you'll notice that I am using the trigger line and the starter line that obviously the faded cards are going to have because they have confirmed that all the starters are the same. This card is not out yet. Technically, this is a DZ02 card if we want the version with the skill. If we don't want the version with the skill, then it's not this one. So by all means, use any starter you want, but I am going to put this here, and we're just going to treat it as a when wrote upon draw card because we all know this thing's skill is when wrote upon draw card. So yeah, technically we're cheating and technically we're not. Anyways, Cavity Malagia, Grade 0 boost, 5k Shosuke base. It's a standard starter. Again, you don't have to run this. I just choose to run it for the theme. We all know what his skill actually is. Even the fandom has it, but the version with the skill printed on it doesn't get released till set 2. But we're just going to pretend like the actual version exists because Bushy shouldn't have just made all these vanillas for some reason. Now let's move on to our triggers. First, we're on Over Trigger and Terrifying Wicked Dragon King Vamfreeze. Grade 0 boost, 50k shield, 5k power. Over Trigger, moment trigger in your deck. Reverse, add trigger with the card, draw a card, choose one of your moves. It gets plus 1 for the turn. And if you voted during your check, activate its suggestion effect, which you get during your turn. All your Vanguards get plus 10,000 power, plus 1 crit to the end of this fight. In a deck that can swing 4 times. Once you get to grade 3, almost every turn, and you have a Vanguard who will always be at least 23k, having that add an extra 10k for 33 and double crit with possible Persona Rides because you can consistently Persona Ride search, so 43 double crit is all around pretty nice pressure. You can run Obari for more numbers. Personally, I don't like doing that. You can also run Walnut for more multi-attack, but I prefer Vamfreeze because if you pull Vamfreeze early, like how you could pull Gelmaga Hill early, yeah, your opponent's gonna hate you, and your opponent pretty much can't stop you because for the rest of the game, your Vanguard will always be double crit. So the longer the game drags out, the more it will benefit you. So, you can really run any over you want, but I do prefer Vamfreeze because, again, you see it early, it screws over your opponent. You see it later. If your opponent doesn't automatically die from the over, it'll probably be the one that has the most lasting impact because it lasts more than just the turn you drive check it. So, 1 Vamfreeze. Then we move on to our normal triggers. Run 3 copies of Rouse, Wild Master Riley. Grade 0 boost, 5k shield, 4k base. Continues guard. So, components Vanguards are grade 3 or greater, plus 5k shield. So, 10k shield is very nice to have. It's also draw triggers, helps increase the hand. The deck does not soul charge that much. I think there's only 1 card in this deck that okay, there's 2 cards in this deck that actively soul charge. One of them only does it once per game, and you'll see what I mean by that in a second. Actually, no, wait, there's 3 cards in here that activate soul charge. Okay, the point is, one of them only does it once per game. One of them you're probably only going to use once per game, if at most twice. And then the other one, it only does it the second it's placed, and that's it. So that kind of tells you what that card is. But Riley doesn't really deck you out too fast, and she helps increase the hand. And she's a good 10k shield, so she's obviously a 3 of. Then we run 8 crits, so 4 Stem Deviate Dragon, 4 Direful Doll Bethany, so both are grades those boost 15k shield. The difference is Bethany has 5k power. You can run any crit you want, but you know, again, canonically, the quick start decks are going to have the same triggers and starters as the respective Faded Zero bosses, and well, Bethany was on the quick start deck, so yeah, you get why she's here. And then Stem Deviate was a 4k base, is auto rear guard them out of the boosted, put the soul, choose a remove 2k for the turn. Okay, this deck doesn't run into soul problems. But if you are spamming the card that draws you stuff left, right, and center, which does cost 2 soul blasts, then you use stem deviate to try to mitigate that by just continuously setting it to soul. You shouldn't do that by any means. I don't do that, but to be fair, maybe that's why I don't like the deck that much. So keep track of your soul, but if you really need him to mitigate that problem, possibly, you have 4 of him for a reason. So we got the 8 crits for pressure. And of course, we have 4 heals and Joyful Songster. I would honestly probably run her in this deck anyways because I think she's really cute. Grade 0 boost, fitting a shield, 5k power. Standing heal, enough about it. You can really run any heal you want. You can run counter heals. I don't like counter heals too much. I feel like they're too situational. If you want to run the counter heals, by all means, I'm not going to stop you, but because I can't, but also because I don't give a shit. But I just like the 4 Joyful here. And again, theming for the triggers. And I'll move on to our grade 1. So 3 copies of the first card in the deck that actually soul charges, and that is Rainbow Blower. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. Act rear guard circle once per turn. If you persona mode this turn by counter blasting 1, soul charge 1, then choose up to 1 card from your soul card to rear guard and gets +10 power for the turn. Okay. As you will see with the rest of the quick start deck bosses, or with the rest of the quick start deck decks that I made for, DZ set 1, a lot of cards will rely on persona riding. And as my friend made the point clear to me when we were playing with Crystonios in this deck for the first time, a lot of the cards require on persona riding. I promise you that's not an issue. Because the deck A can consistently search, all of them can consistently source the Persona Rise, because the main grade 3 does that. So unless you hit all 3 of them into the damage zone, you are going to get a Persona Ride. Or you hit all 3 into drop zone, but that really only happens with Crystonios. The sad part is that actually happened to him that game, where 2 of them, and 1 ended up in drop, the other ended up in damage. He only had to search 1 more. So basically he was out of all of them. But you're pretty much always going to get the Persona Ride off, which is nice, but being able to soul charge 1 increased soul, get a free rear guard in case your opponent board nuked you, and give it 10k, or give herself 10k, and making her a TK booster is all around pretty solid. The only downside to her is she costs CB, so towards the end of the game, if you don't kill in that Persona Ride turn, that CB will become like a domino effect that screws you over. But if you kill in the first Persona Ride turn, you're good, or even second Persona Ride turn. Anything past that, that first CB will become the inevitable domino effect that might fuck you over. But Rainbow Blower, very good, grade 1, nice to have 3 of. Then we have 4 copies of Cyan Kogen Mato. Okay, a point what I'll make with the other decks as well is that these Ride Deck discard cards, as bad as I said they were, because, it reminded me of the Leonore, Youthberg, and Dradjul one, which I never thought were bad, but everyone else said were bad, so I just assumed these ones would be bad. No, they're really useful. So, Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, aka base, auto when discard from your hand during your ride phase. By any means, by the way. I learned that when I was playing Crystonios, because there's a lot of BS you can do with Crystonios with the cards that specifically say when ditch during ride phase, and not ditch for ride deck during ride phase. There's a very big difference. You may call this card to rear guard as rest. All around, pretty solid, because at least in this deck, it's just a free rear guard and you don't have to discard anything for it because, it just replaces stuff from ride deck, which is all around pretty solid because if you're going first, and that's typically where these Energy Blast 4 decks fall down because you don't get the free Energy Charge 3 because you're not going second, you want to have as much aggro as possible, so being able to call itself back if you went first, and then when you get to grade 2, your opponent's at grade 1 on 8k Vanguard, you can bully them with your free called 8k, so all around pretty soft for that. But also if you win second, it's just nice early game setup, and because you don't have to commit too many more cards to rear guard from hand, because Kokomato already goes to rear guard, if you want to save your hand cards until your Persona Ride turn, you have a nice 8k on board. All around Sign is a pretty good grade 1, very solid card to have, and it's just a good 4 of. Then we have 4 copies of the other card in this deck that soul charges, and that is Brainwash Swirler. So, grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base. What I've learned is Brainwash has a very specific pattern of showing up in this deck, and I'll go over that in a second. Auto placed on rear guard circle, soul charge 1 guaranteed, and then auto rear guard when your card is put into your soul by soul charging effect, not by sending it to soul, so don't try to stem deviate it, it's not going to work. If your Vanguard's a grade 3 or greater, this unit goes to the power for that turn, plus 10k if you soul charge 2. So pretty much every second you soul charge, even if you soul charge 2 cards at a time, you'll still get the 5k per card. Here's the pattern I was talking about with Brainwash in this deck. I will draw one of them, and I'll play it most likely, and I'll draw 2 or 3 in the following few turns. Meaning, at some point in the Persona Ride turn, or Persona Ride turns, I will casually proc off 4 Brainwashes all at the same time. And whatever Brainwash was called first is going to be somewhere in the high 20s. Or higher 30s, or even higher 40s. I forgot what the bigger number was. But, yeah, 4 of Brainwash. He is kind of like... Those Persona Ride turns hit hard, and it's partially because of Brainwash. So, 4 of Brainwash, just a very solid grade 1, and yeah, that's all I can really say about him. Then we have 4 of our PG, Ridicule, Disruptor, Grade 1 Boost, if 0 Social K base, contains Sentinel, may have to only 4 Sentinels in the deck on the guard circle, choose one of your units, and cannot be hit in the battle, and if your hand is 2 or more cards, and it's 2 cards from this card is standard PG. Nothing too special about it, basically means there's only one card in hand. If this and only one of the cards is in your hand, place it on guard circle, you don't have to control much great, because that means you can be as aggressive as you want in the early game, and unless you're me, you don't, wait. Yeah, typically you will call Brainwash Swirler before you get to grade 3, but because I like pulling off his full effect because it's so satisfying to do so, I will wait till I get to grade 3 to call Brainwash, unless I am fully confident the only way I'm winning that game is if I rush early. Then I will call Brainwash before I get to grade 3. Otherwise, I'm going to save all of them until I get to grade 3, and I will save them typically until I have at least 2 or 3 of them, preferably 3. But you know, if you early rush with just 3 Rainbow Blowers, because F it, and then your opponent counterattacks you, Ridicule, Disruptor. All around very solid PG. You can run Repelled Malice, you can run Riskill, Hate Dragon, because they all have the same skill, but I prefer Ridicule, Disruptor because it came out around the same time as Oselargest, so 4 of. Then we have our last grade 1 in the deck, and the last card in the deck that actually soul charge, and this was the one I meant earlier by it only soul charges once per game. Also, this is the one I meant earlier that you're only going to use once per game, if not twice, and that is featuring Balancer. Grade 1 boost, 5k shield, 8k base, auto when wrote upon by Steam Trimmer Nebuchador. Soul charge 2, choose one of your vanguards, it gets +1,000 power for that turn, so AK Steam Trimmer, and then continues rear guard during turn if you have a grade 3, get a vanguard or Solar as card in, gets +1,000 power. So 13k. I want a very solid rear guard to have, because worst comes to worst and you have to save your boosters for like your 4th attack, or it's just too early in the game for you to have boosters, you're playing against an opponent that's just board nuking you constantly, or you just need soul call targets because your entire soul charge has been triggers that entire game. That has happened to me before. You have featuring Balancer, it's at least a 13k, Persona Ride turns 23k, and if you call it for more soul, just goes to 33k. It's a very solid grade 1 to have, and it gets you 2 free soul charges. It pretty much solo procs the grade 2 skill on its own, and it makes the grade 2 15k base, meaning they can't just trigger, like they can't just throw on a trigger on the guard circle for a over to pass, because now that trigger on the guard circle, unless that trigger has 20k shield, is a guaranteed 1 to pass, which makes a difference if your opponent's gambling on you not seeing a trigger. So 2 of featuring Balancer in the main deck, just in case you want to soul charge more of them and get more 13k slash just options and soul on board, and then whatever in the right deck, because free soul charge, free 5k, and auto sets up a free draw for the following turn. So pretty good card. And move on to our grade 2s. 4 copies of the first of these cards that I actually liked. You see, it's weird because I normally hate when Bushy gives a bunch of decks almost the exact same card, at least for the first skill for verbatim, especially the Psycho cards, and yet the set of Psycho cards I actually liked. So, and it was actually probably because of her, because I liked her art the second I saw her. Steam Gunner Tizquar, grade 2 set 5k shield, 10k base. Auto when placed on guard circle from the hand or discard from hand while riding from ride deck. Counter boss 1 energy, boss 3, draw a card. Again, like we said with the energy generator, typically you're not going to use any of your energy unless you absolutely have to, because you want to save the rest of them for Oselargest, so this will eat into the CB a little bit, but to be fair, you have heal triggers. That's my argument. You have heal triggers. Now, that sounds like a dumb argument, because like you could just get heal locked out. I'm going to tell you this right now. You would not believe how often you don't get healed locked out. Or to be more exact, if you play a certain way, aka you play like me and you play recklessly with no plan in mind, meaning you can't really predict what's going to happen outside of what the main grade 3 does, yeah, you don't really get CB star that much. Also, if you're me and you were forced into playing CB for you, at this point I've told this story like 20 different times, and there's going to be a person that one day asked me to do a video on this entire bullshit story, because it sounds made up, but it's like legit true. But to sum it up, there was a year where I was forced to only use CB because the only option I had to play the game was online, and my buttons wouldn't work, and I could only use CB and discard as the cost. So I played Dauntless, and I basically learned that if you play a very specific way, no one can CB starve you truly, because where there's a will, there's a way, and one CB is more than enough at any point in the game, and more or less, unless your opponent is planning to kill you in one turn, they're going to have to attack the Vanguard at some point, and when they do, they've opened up the floodgates to hell. So, yeah, we're just going to ignore that, but free draw, which is nice. And then auto when placed on rear guard, so Persona Road this turn, counter boss 1, energy boss 3, you may soul charge 1 until end of the turn, this unit gets boosted 5,000 power. Pretty solid. Again, if you want to use on Persona turns to eat away at the CB because you want to kill your opponent in one go ahead, get free soul charge. You don't have to get the soul charge to get the boost in 5k, but if you want to get the soul charge, you can. And again, 15k booster for a turn. That's pretty solid. And adding hand cards while putting it on guard circle definitely helps to maybe draw PGs or draw more defensive cards when your opponent's outright rushing you. So 4 of Tizquar, very solid card. Another ride deck replacing option thanks to Cyan over here. But also we have more ways to increase our hand during defensive moments, which is good as well. So 4 of. And we have 4 copies of Full Pigment Dragon. Yeah, this thing went from the most useful of like the grade 2s that were in the quick start decks that support their bosses to like the worst so quickly because the deck eats up so much more CB now. Grade 2 and step 5 Kishio, 10k base, auto rear guard when this unit attacks into anything. If you have a grade 3 grade Vanguard or Oselargest card name CB1, put another from a rear guard to soul, draw a card. Cool that it doesn't have to be boosted, and it doesn't have to attack a specific grade of unit, or it doesn't have to attack anything specific in general. The reason why this matters is because if you're trying to kill your opponent's rear guards, like you can't kill them that turn, or maybe you're going to go for multi-attack and you need your extra boost as much as possible, you can just swing this into the rear guard after swinging with your other frontward unit, send that frontward unit to soul, get more draws, open up your rear guard circle, use Oselargest, use another card to superior call over this. All around is a very solid card, and it gets you a hand card to replace the unit you call too. So for Full Pigment, it's just a good grade 2. It's gets soul and it gets hand. Just the downside is because the deck eats up so much more CB on stuff like Tizcar, for example. You don't really use it that often, but when you do get to use it, it's a good card. So 4 of. Then we have our last grade 2 in the deck, 2 of in the main deck, 1 of in the right deck of Steam Trimmer, Nebu Jador. That's the only time I'm going to try to pronounce that name while reading this card. Grade 2 and step 5 Kishio, 10k base, auto and wrote upon by a grade 3 card Oselargest card name. If your soul has 4 more cards in it, draw a card. If you're wondering how you do that, starter equals 1. This thing equals 2, and then its skill, soul charging 2, equals 4. Oh, look at that. And by the way, the only card in the deck that's Soul Blast is a grade 3. So basically, this card says, when you ride into your grade 3, just get a draw. Because there's physically no way not to get a draw in this version of the deck. So, free draw, and then contains guard circle. If your Vanguard's a grade 3 guard or Oselargest card name, plus 10,000 shield. Which is very useful because your Persona right turn is your main kill turn. Yes, this deck can kill on turn 3. It's not going to happen very often compared to other decks that can do it. Ahems are also. But, being able to be a 15k shield and protect you until you can get to that Persona right turn is very helpful. Nebu has been pretty much the one grade 2 of the ride lines that I have spammed that skill 24/7. The only exception to that being Marlene. But yeah, and also the fact that it's a call target from the Vanguard. I like how the ride deck is actually useful in this deck because you can call them from soul for either more number setup or just other possible cards to call, or 15k shield that keeps you alive. So 2 of in the main deck of Nebu, 1 of in the ride deck, all around a very solid grade 2, and I really like the Scythe because it's just really cool. Then move on to our grade 3s, 4 copies of Steam Artist Tiragon. I will stand by the statement firmly. Oselargest got the worst of the grade 3s because all it adds is numbers. Okay, well, granted, so does Marlene's, but Marlene's kind of had hers covered. I don't really know how to explain it. Marlene was just inherently better than Oselargest because they could search PGs. Oselargest can't. So grade 3 10% 13k base, auto when put on rear guard from soul. Wait, put from rear guard into the soul. Oh yeah, they definitely got the worst of the grade 3s. If you have a grade 3 grade Vanguard with Oselargest card name, soul blast 2 cards with different names from this card to draw a card. So not only do you have to willingly soul blast out your engine of superior calling, but also this card only procs from Full Pigment in this deck. While at least the other ones you could just hard call and they would still proc. This has to be put into soul from rear guard. Like, you can't even just soul charge it off of Brainwash or featuring Balancer. You have to specifically soul charge it off of Full Pigment or any other card that does almost the exact same thing. So I already hate that card. And then auto rear guard on the attack, soul blast 1, it'll get plus 5,000 power on the battle if you soul blast with a grade 3 guard or Oselargest card name for the cost. I mean, at least the deck can soul charge them, so you can technically profit off on the opponents at grade 2. It gets plus 15 instead of 5. The deck does not have a number problem. It doesn't. It doesn't need this to fix that. What this should have been is A, like the other ones, place on rear guard, draw a card. It could still keep the double soul blast. That would have been fine. But this skill should have been like the one that what's it called? The one that Triumph Dragon has and gives it a crit, or gives it the ability to send itself to soul and call something else out. I don't know, something different. I don't know why they just gave this one numbers, like they just couldn't think of anything else. But 4 of Turga is not bad, but like comparatively in this deck, it's a deck card unless Full Pigment's somewhere on the board. And while the 15k is a nice pressure and all, you don't need it for numbers. You really don't. The deck gets enough numbers as is, mainly thanks to Brainwash and Rainbow Blower, but still, it's there if you need it. 4 of. And then we have our last card in the deck, 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the right deck of our main grade 3, Cruel Beast, Demonic Lord, Oselargest. Grade 3 to 9%, 13k base, one of the only DZ start deck bosses we actually have the English form of, which honestly looks pretty badass. Active Vanguard, circle once per turn, counter boss 1, should take up to 1 copy of the same card as him, reveal it, put it to your hand, shuffle your deck, and gets tons of power for the turn. Like the other ones, you can counter boss 1, you don't have to add something to hand, you can just shuffle the deck and then get the 10k out of it, which is all around pretty solid. So, free 23k base every turn as long as you have CB. And then Auto Vanguard card when he attacks into a Vanguard. By energy blasting 4, choose a Great Deals card from your soul called the rearguard circle, and it will get +1 as a power for that turn. Cool. That ability is so beautiful because you can call anything from the soul as long as you know you don't have grade 4s, grade 5s or higher in your deck. But you can call anything from the soul and it's automatically hitting unless your opponent sees a trigger. So like say for example you had to call Van Freeze because Van Freeze was literally your only other option outside of this. Then Steam Deviate because they have less numbers. Then you could call Van Freeze and you get the 10k out of it. So unless they see triggers, it's still hitting if your persona at 25k. Like again, you have plenty of options too because 15k interceptor, 23, 33k base, depending if you persona that turn or not. Brainwash spam galore, the other target for full pigment, by the way. This if you have no other options. And then, you know, like, the options are endless with Oselargest. It pretty much turns any of your bad or good soul charges into a weapon. So all around, Oselargest is pretty solid. Typically what I like to do is I like to call Steam Trimmer first if I know I can't kill that turn, because I like to make sure I have a 15k interceptor on board. Unless I already have the other two in hand, then typically I will call Featuring Balancer. That typically is what my first grade 3 turn consists of. I call one of the two, and then the next turn I just, if I have called Steamer, I will intercept with it, and if I called Balancer, well then I probably would just guard with the other two Steamers in my hand. But yeah, pretty much helps set up for defense the next turn, goes all in on offense we needed to, and this was the deck I, what's it called? I called it the triple Oselargest swing because the game that I won with this that I felt like was really important, I think it was against Youthburg, as I tested the deck out against. I went Persona Ride, draw a card, 10k, swung with an Oselargest rear guard because that was my only option, used full pigment to send that to soul to draw a card, and then swung with Oselargest, called the other Oselargest that was in my soul, swung with that, and I had 3 Oselargest swing back to back to back, which is really funny, and while I still had the full pigment. So all around, it's a very solid grade 3, adds numbers, searches Persona Rides, gets multi-attack, gets 10k guaranteeing that it will hit unless the opponent sees triggers. Wasn't all to love about it. Easy 3 of in the main deck, 1 of in the red deck. And without further ado, I'm just one here. Hope you guys enjoyed. All around, this deck is fun to play. It has just turned into my least favorite, which isn't to say that it's bad. Like, it's just turned into my least favorite because the other decks are so much more fun to play than what I thought before, and mainly because they actually felt like they were upgraded. This one, again, worst of the grade 3s, but also it just felt like it kind of stayed the same compared, even though we got Brainwash, which ups the number count so much, and same with Rainbow Blower, but the deck just feels like it kind of just stayed the same, but slightly upgraded, where everyone else, for example, Triumph Dragon, the entire form were getting double crit, or Crystonio somehow turning consistent. It was just, it just doesn't feel like it was upgraded compared to those guys. So without further ado, I'm going to end this one here. I hope you guys enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe for Twitch, and I'll see you all in the next one. Don't forget to set up your Vanguards.